Welcome to the Porecast. I'm your host, Carly Harmson. As a licensed master esthetician with nearly 2 decades of experience, I feel confident to meet you here every week to educate about the latest trends and must-have skin treatments, as well as to decode the science and demystify the overwhelming world of skincare. Whether you're a wide-eyed, curious beginner or you're a veteran skincare pro, this is the podcast for you. So grab your favorite face mask and come discover with me someone who's not only a skincare guru, but also a card-carrying member of Skincare Obsessed, just like you. Get ready for this episode of the podcast, starting now. Hello and welcome. If you are new here, my name's Carly Harmson. I'm a licensed master esthetician, which, by the way, is a legitimate state-issued license in my state and in a few states in the US. It's not a self-proclamation. And I have been an educator since 2011, doing things like teaching at a renowned medical aesthetics school, educating for top prestigious skincare brands, as well as educating other estheticians and estheticians in training through my own education company. I love to share knowledge, especially in an industry that is driven by lots of trends and marketing bullshit and paid influencers. So I hope you'll stay a while and come to look forward to my episodes each week, which drop every single Wednesday. And as always, to my regular listeners, I see you, I appreciate you, I love you. I am so amazed at the sense of community that this podcast has already begun to curate. And I'm now starting to wonder, do we need a name for you guys? You know, like the pod squad, which is already taken. We can't use that. Let me know if you have any ideas. The only thing that keeps coming up in my head is the porkers, which is terrible. I know it sounds so bad, and it definitely does not describe you beautiful people. Anyway, if you were here because you were anticipating the second part of this 2-part episode in the limelight emitting diode, hell yeah. And if you just happened upon this episode without listening to part 1 first, I invite you to go back and give it a listen. It's just before this episode, and it will help to set the scene for today. For those of you that already have listened to part 1, let's just quickly recap what we discussed last week. LED light therapy goes by many different names: low-level light therapy, photobiomodulation, cool or soft laser, red light therapy, and more. These terms are used interchangeably, and I will be using them interchangeably today too. LED stands for light emitting diode, and it emits wavelengths of visible and non-visible light for therapeutic benefits for the skin and beyond. Light therapy has a long history of hundreds, even thousands and counting, peer-reviewed research, clinical studies, and papers proving its efficacy and results. It is non-invasive, non-painful, non-heat-forming treatment, and it's considered very safe for most people. It may be administered medically or professionally in a spa or med spa, or it can be acquired now for personal use at home. It works by activating mitochondria of the cell and increasing ATP production, which has many helpful effects on the skin. It can also help our skin to become more adaptable to stress and toxins and free radicals by increasing ROS, promoting youthfulness and longevity in the skin. Different wavelengths of color have different benefits to the skin. I think that about covers high level everything we talked about already. So on to the main event. Why should we care about this science? Because of what it can do for us, which I've already teased about in the previous episode. Most of the studies are from red light, near infrared, or a combination of the two. Although blue light is the next most studied wavelength after red and near infrared, it is much more hyperspecific in its benefits, and it does have some special considerations too. If you want to learn more about that, go back to the previous episode, part 1. But remember that blue light primarily targets acne. So, the main results or themes of red and near infrared light include increase in cellular energy, reduction of oxidative stress. We've already talked about the how of both of these in part 1, and we recap just now in part 2. Reactive oxygen species, ROS, mitochondria, and adenosine triphosphate, ATP, are the 3 keywords to remember here. So, benefits of these main 2 results include boost in circulation, a reduction in inflammation and redness, repairing of sun damage, prevention of post inflammatory hyperpigmentation and post inflammatory erythema, wound healing, scar reduction, and an increase in collagen and elastin production. So, really, these benefits are fueled by those 2 main results I've highlighted: increased cell energy and reduction of oxidative stress. But for funsies, let's talk about some of these in more detail. So, number 1, boosts circulation. Red and near infrared light does this by increasing nitric oxide uptake in the vascular system, which brings oxygen and nutrients to the tissues. This results in a more alive, vibrant, and healthy skin. Oxygen is life. And number 2, due to increased circulation and blood flow, oxygen can also move into injured or wounded areas and can push out swelling. But more importantly, and not too simply, PBM reduces levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines in activated inflammatory cells, thus reducing inflammation at its source. These lights are so profound that they are being administered and studied for cases of musculoskeletal pain and even arthritis. So, where are my carpal tunnel girlies at? Get you a red light device. Really. I wish I had started mine earlier. Number 3, repairing sun damage. How? Sun damage, aka photo damage, is damage done at a cellular level by UV, ultraviolet light exposure. This is from the sun. This damages the DNA, which over time can result in symptoms like uneven skin tone, wrinkles, laxity in the skin, or dull, lackluster skin. Now, oftentimes we do associate sun damage with photo damage or hyperpigmentation or melasma. While many claim that red light can help reduce pigmented lesions or spots, I just could not find any science to back that claim up. It seems much of this is perpetuated by red light device manufacturers, red light wand, and the claim is that it increases mitochondrial activity, which in turn helps produce new cells and to heal the skin, which it does. But there's no evidence that it interferes with the tyrosinase or melanin pathways, so do with that whatever you'd like. We do know it reduces inflammation, and inflammation is kind of the root cause or root symptom rather of hyperpigmentation. Number 4, this leads me to the next benefit on the list, and that's reduced post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation and post-inflammatory erythema. This is redness and pigment that can arise acutely after injury, trauma, or wound to the skin. In many skin tones, it is temporary and resolves itself quickly. However, in darker, more melanated skin, it can take much longer or sometimes even last permanently. A classic example of this is when someone has a pimple or what the layman would call a zit, and they start to poke and prod and pick at it. They might squeeze out some gunk, and eventually it scabs and minimizes, begins to heal. Some may notice a red spot after that turns into a dark spot for a few days to weeks to even months, depending on your skin tone. This is known as post-inflammatory erythema or PIE and post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, PIH. And red light and near infrared light can help to not only reduce that inflammation and redness, thus possibly preventing the post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation and post-inflammatory erythema entirely. It can also accelerate healing of that poor pick-me spot. Not to be confused with the pick-me girl, but the pick-me spot. So while not necessarily clear if red or near infrared light is helpful in pigmentation problems, it is helpful in post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. Number 5, with wound healing, low-level light therapy helps in this way. Decreased inflammation, increase oxygen and blood flow. We've already talked about this. But due to mitochondrial activation and subsequent ATP increase, cellular functions like cell mitosis and proliferation or division is increased. In other words, it speeds up the production of new healthy cells, which can re-epithelialize and close margins of wounds much quicker. Number 6, in much the same way, this can help with scar formation, and specifically through mitochondrial activation and ATP synthesis, it can activate important cell factories, i.e., fibroblasts, the all-important fibroblasts, collagen, and elastin, to help boost the production of these important fibers that will help to strengthen and fortify the wound as it repairs and heals. Note that some have sworn by red light for stretch marks. While I have not personally or professionally tried this, I have no anecdote here to confirm. Stretch marks are a type of scar that theoretically could be benefited from red light. However, if stretch marks are from pregnancy and one is actively pregnant, be a smarty, run it by your provider, okay? Or if you've got a client, make sure they run it by their provider. Number 7, significantly red light and near infrared light do quite a number on the collagen and elastin fibroblasts. I kind of talked about that a second ago, which can smooth the appearance of the skin, reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles, and help to lift and firm the skin. This perk is probably the most celebrated of benefits that PBM delivers. This is, of course, thanks to that so important mitochondria that just thrives in the presence of this light. It just basks in the presence of this light. So, with so many benefits, what's the downside to light therapy? Where does the other shoe drop? Surprisingly, there really isn't much of a dark side to this light, but there are a few considerations or contraindications, so let's run them. First, I mentioned that blue light is somewhat controversial because of the possibility of hyperpigmentation. To get the scoop on that, go back to part 1. I will say, importantly, that it is advisable that blue light devices are used with protective eyewear. Uniquely, blue light may be problematic to eye health, and yes, we know for sure that the sustained exposure, like that of looking at a computer 12 hours a day and then going home and looking at your cell phone for a few more hours, it certainly does cause eye problems. At best, eye fatigue, and at worst, retinal damage. But in the low dose of blue light device for aesthetic purposes, it's not clear, so it's better to be safe than sorry. Okay, other possible contraindications include a disorder which is characterized or exacerbated by photosensitivity, and while these can be rare, these cases can occur. And of course, along with that, photosensitive medication. So these include, but please know this is not an exhaustive list, so check yourself. Antibiotics, particularly in the tetracycline family, certain oral contraceptives, antihistamines, NSAIDs, and some antidepressants, although not of the SSRI category. These could result in a severe reaction. For those that have epilepsy, flashing or bright lights can trigger a seizure event, so it's important to avoid LED altogether if you have epilepsy or you're a professional with an epileptic client or patient. Malignant cancers. So due to the activation of mitochondria that can cause increased proliferation or division of cells, it's best to avoid this therapy if you or someone you know is currently battling a malignant cancer or tumor. It's always best to err on the side of caution, especially in these cases. Okay, now rosacea. This is interesting. This is not a hard contraindication, no. Most advocates and providers of red light and near infrared light like to think this is a perfectly gentle and safe treatment for those with rosacea, and I tend to agree with them. However, keep in mind there is that nitric oxide increase from red light that can happen. Nitric oxide is considered a vasodilator and it can increase blood flow. And in general, we're looking to not do that with rosacea individuals. So I would say this is a case by case basis, more like a yellow light rather than a red light. Most people with rosacea will do just fine. I would suggest starting at a low treatment time, i.e., dose, maybe 2 minutes, 2 times a week, and just see if anything feels activated. If not, increase by a couple minutes each session until you're at the therapeutic treatment time, just to be safe. Okay, those are your main contraindications. Of course, there's some kind of general standard aesthetic contraindications like a sunburn or open wounds. So those are kind of the light specific ones that I wanted to review today, but there are other contraindications outside of that. So look at your manufacturer's instruction manual to learn more. All right, let's talk specifications when looking for an LED home device, panel, or a mask. And let me first preface this with adding that I hope I can provide some clarification on FDA approved versus FDA cleared conversation today, which can be bewildering. So, just in case you didn't know, an LED device is considered a class 2 medical device. This means that the FDA believes it poses a medium risk to general population, but with user manuals and user education, this is pretty mitigated. Another example of a class 2 medical device would be like pregnancy tests or the electric wheelchairs, the jazzy, just for some perspective. So, your aesthetic lasers tend to live in the realm of a class 3 device, which has a higher risk to the population and which will need a pre market approval from the FDA, FYI. Your LED light devices don't necessarily need that, which is why they're much more available in mass in the marketplace for consumer use. Oh, and before I forget, some good news about these class 2 devices. Some health savings accounts will consider LED light devices as an approved purchase. So don't take my word for it. Double check with your own health savings account advocates to find out if they will cover LED light for you. Okay, back on track. Let's talk the difference between FDA approved and FDA cleared. So, while LED does not need pre market approval nor FDA registration, it should be FDA cleared. FDA cleared is defined as the FDA allowing a device to market based on a substantial equivalence to another legally marketed predicate device. So, in a simpler way, there's already something that exists in the marketplace for consumers with a similar technology. And as it stands today, there are no FDA approved LED devices that I'm aware of because, as a class 2 device, it's just not needed. So, if you see a device claiming FDA approved or FDA approval to try to stand out in the sea of light, buyer beware. This is a classic case of false advertising, folks. I find that if you Google that keyword, FDA approved LED, it'll come up in the title of each hit as an FDA approved device. And then when you click into it and dive in a little bit more, it will say FDA cleared. So it's a little misleading. So just keep that in mind. So the FDA does approve specific uses of red light therapy, but not specific devices, if that makes sense, which is why FDA cleared is really all you need to know. Now, choosing an at home device or mask. So, when looking to invest in your skin with this amazing piece of technology, there are few specifications to look for. The three main indicators of power and thus efficacy are wavelength, power density, and dose. So, wavelength, remember in the visible spectrum, wavelength is also a color, but it is a measurement of depth of penetration in nanometers. With power density, this is a measurement of how the light is at a given point, aka the light power density. Specifically, it's how many light photons are passing through a given area of space. So, sometimes used interchangeably with irradiation, it means the total energy delivered divided by the area. This is energy per unit area. Some mathematic formula that is way above my pay grade, but yet I'm here. I always joke that I became an esthetician because I'm not a mathematician, but I've found in laser physics you kind of have to be both. So with dose, this could refer to the energy density, or sometimes called the fluence, and sometimes measured in joules per square centimeter. But others use this to refer to the literal dose of light applied, i.e., the time. So 15 minutes a day, 3 times a week, for example. All these things should be considered when purchasing a device. And I know you're like, what the hell, Carly? How am I supposed to know what power density and fluence of a light panel to look for? Don't worry, I got you. I've got some recommendations to kind of get you started. So for red light, a device in the range of 630 to 660 nanometers is ideal. For near infrared, a device in the range of 820 to 840 nanometers is considered the gold standard. And if you'll remember in part one of this episode, that actually near infrared goes all the way up to 1400 nanometers. But in the application for skin health, that sweet spot is 820 to 840 nanometers based on research. And then in the blue light range of 460 to 470 nanometers is thought to be the most beneficial. That's a much smaller range there. All right, so that covers our wavelength. According to research, the optimal clinical irradiance is considered to be around 400 to 100 milliwatts divided by the area in square centimeters. So that damn math again. Luckily for us, we shouldn't have to calculate it. So for home use, a device in lower power density can be effective because we're using it more. So we're getting more of that dose. So a power density of anything above 5 milliwatts would be acceptable. Remember, the irradiance is the light beam which delivers photons, those little sparkly light particles. Think like Edward Cullen. Just kidding. Those little sparkly light particles that energize the cells. This specification is really important, only second to wavelength, chosen to target a specific thing. Okay, the higher the irradiance from power density means shorter treatment time or dose required. So if you have a low power density device, then you'll need longer treatment time. Each device should indicate ideal treatment times based on their calculation of irradiance or energy delivered. So, for example, a clinical device may only require 2 minutes of irradiance, whereas a home device with a much lower power output requires 30 minutes of treatment time. So, it's not a one size fits all in terms of time applied. All right, I know that was a lot. You may have to listen and re-listen to those specifications again, take notes, but that's the beauty of a podcast episode, friends. You can rewind. Wait, that's not what it'd be called. Is my millennial showing? You can rewind the podcast and get everything you need. So take it all in, my fellow chic geeks. We did it. Now let's talk about some great devices which are not sponsored that fit these specifications. First, I like the specs on the Priori Unveiled LED mask. And a bonus, they have a device also for the neck and décolleté and an LED glove to treat the backs of the hands. Fun fact, I used Priori forever ago, like in the Audis, and I love this brand. They were launched originally with like coffee berry extract, which was kind of novel antioxidant at the time, which I think they've moved away from now, but it was a great brand to work with. And I've heard great things about them today. And I love that they have these devices to accompany their skincare. Their devices range in price from $385 to $440. Next, reigning supreme is the Omnilux Mask Contour. So Omnilux has really paved the way for that true accessibility to LED home devices. And like Priori, they have a glove, but they also have a spot treatment and also an iPad applicator. So 1010, no notes, price ranges from $95 on those little spot and area treatments to $395 for the mask. The Omnilux Clear is a great option too, with some blue light added for treatment of problematic skin. Okay, next up is the viral Dr. Dennis Gross skincare mask, and it goes for $495. That seems to check a lot of the boxes too, and it may complement that brand of skincare as well. So, with these three unpaid endorsements, these are all in a very affordable range of lights. There are somewhere upwards of $2,000 that just aren't it. So, you can get great value with one of these three masks that I recommended. And I know $500 for a device can feel really expensive, but it is an investment. Most of them have like 2-year warranties and could be a great replacement or accompaniment to things like injectables. Okay, in the professional panels and devices, we have the Saluma Pro LED panel and the Lightstem Ellipse Spa. Both of these are reputable brands, but their price is considerably higher as they are meant to be used clinically. I'll say that I personally have the Saluma Pro, and while I like that it is a flexible panel and I can use it anywhere on my body for skin health or pain or inflammation, I will be purchasing a face mask, likely the Omnilux, for ease of use and the ability to multitask. For a hard body panel, not a hard body, but a hard panel, I really like the Juve full body light panel. I've used it personally in wellness clinics as a client, and it did warm up a little bit, which indicates the power density of that panel. I checked the specs on this one and it fits the bill, but as a full body panel, it is quite expensive. So when purchasing a device for yourself, other considerations or preferences might include, again, soft or like a soft pliable panel or a hard shell panel or mask. Warranty, recommended treatment times. You might look for something that has a higher irradiance so you can do less treatment time because that fits better into your lifestyle. And then if the device is battery operated, or if you are tethered by a cord, if you're plugged in. So think about these things when you're taking a look at different possible devices for yourself, or if you're a professional for use in your treatment room. So, with the onslaught of these devices in the market, hopefully these few little tips will help you as you make a decision to invest in your skin health using the magic of light. Before we wrap up today, I do want to share a few little tips and best practices of implementing light therapy into your world. Number one, behind wavelength, energy density matters. There is something known in light therapy as diminishing returns. So once you achieve optimal irradiance, anything beyond that is kind of pointless. So to determine that optimal irradiance, you can ask the manufacturers of your mask or device, but typically any additional treatment time outside of the directions would be beyond the recommended irradiance. So, for example, one panel might say 30 minutes a day daily, while another mask might say 10 minutes 3 to 5 times per week. So, this would be indicative of that power density of the mask, which then determines the amount of energy into the skin. So follow the directions, and if it's unclear, reach out to the manufacturer of that light device and discover from them. Number two, incorporate light into your routine like you do with working out. So for me, I like to do the light in the mornings, right as I wake up, in place of or in conjunction of with some natural morning light. Some others like to do it right before exercising, some like to do it after, some like to do it as part of their bedtime routine. So make it a part of your routine somewhere so that you're doing it consistently and it will be worth the investment. Number three, along with routine, stacking light therapy with other tasks or habits can really help. So, meditation, grounding pads, watching the latest Housewives episode, listening to your favorite episode of the podcast. Stacking these things will make it more realistic to work into your daily life. Number four, generally the recommended distance of light devices is somewhere between 6 to 12 inches, depending on the device. But a good rule of thumb, the closer you can get to the skin, the more energy that you possibly can deliver into the skin. So try to get it as close as you can. Number five, it is broadly accepted that light should be applied to clean skin. So specifically free of makeup and sunscreen, because both of these cosmetic products contain oftentimes zinc oxide and or titanium dioxide. Those ingredients work by reflecting light off of the skin, so prevent that energy density or irradiation of the skin. So making sure that you do start with clean skin. It doesn't have to be freshly washed skin, but clean skin is a good move. And stacking treatment by adding your favorite gel mask before the light with the light would be an absolute pro move. Number six, while there may be some evidence of red and near infrared improving eye health, we do know that blue light may damage the eyes. And so many devices do not require protective eyewear. Some individuals may still opt to use it, especially if they have sensitive eyes. So tanning goggles are effective for this, and they leave much skin around that delicate eye area exposed and benefiting from the light. And then finally, number seven, there are some devices that have options to have continuous or pulsed light. Pulsed light is like a party on your skin. And some researchers believe it excites the mitochondria even more. However, further research is needed there. A note: no pulse light if you are epileptic or near someone that is epileptic. All right, my friends, we covered a ton today in part 2 of this episode because once again, we talked physics, mathematics, sciences I wouldn't call myself an absolute expert in. I do invite you to research for yourself even more, but you can always come back to this episode for the basics. And as my yoga teacher says, love and light. And as I would say, love and LED light. See you next week. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you liked this episode, be sure to share it with a bestie or on your socials. And if you love the episode, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. Your positive feedback means so much to me. You can connect with me at The Real Besthetician on Instagram or The Besthetician anywhere else. And hey babe, this week's podcast looks like clear with a chance of glow. See you next time.